For us to be prepared is a smart move. And I will say this, the better trained you are and the better prepared you are far less likely to ever find yourself in these problems.
Our attitude can't just be, I'm just going to do my best and hope for the best, right?
Right.
We need to have a different attitude. We need to do what is required. Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the BR Coalition podcast. Today we are talking about our duty to protect and defend our families, gun control, and some steps you can take to level up your security for your family and loved ones. A lot of stuff to dig into here. Dad, Could you start us off with a prayer?
Sure, you bet. All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Saint Joseph, terror of demons,
Pray
pray
for
for
us.
us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
All right, well, let's just get right into it. Dad, you were telling me a story a few days back about something that recently happened in Israel. I thought if you want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it really illustrates the scenario of the danger and the evil that's in the world and the response of the government over there. There was a mass shooting in a synagogue and 7 people died as at the time of the reporting of it. And the response from the Israeli government was not what you might hear in places like in the United States, where many talk about stricter gun laws, and we've got to make sure that some on the left want to register guns and so forth. And the response over there was this: firearm licensing will be expedited and expanded in order to enable thousands of additional citizens to carry weapons. That was a statement from the Prime Minister of Israel. They also said this: the National Security Minister stated, when civilians have guns, they can defend themselves, quote unquote. So, what this shows you, what the Israeli government is doing is they're giving people the chance to protect and defend themselves. There is this mindset that, there's a shooter out there, there's a bad guy, he's got a gun, he's going to do bad things. First of all, he's not going to follow the rules anyway, but they want to make stricter laws, stricter rules, restricting citizens who are law-abiding, who are decent people, from having the ability to protect and defend themselves. Israel's government response is, no, we've got to give people the chance to defend and protect themselves. Another story that really illustrates this is what happened recently in Polk County in Florida. And a man comes home to his house. He's got his girlfriend with him. They walk in the house. He walks into a room, and literally several feet in front of him is a bad guy. A couple of burglars, 2 bad guys break in. They're in the house already. And so he comes home and surprises the burglars who were in his house. He's carrying a gun. He draws, and he feels threatened at this moment. He fires, and they both run out. Now, he hit one of the guys 4 times. He shot 5 rounds. He hit him 4 times. The man still ran out. Collapsed in a park. Law enforcement showed up. They were called. They showed up, and they administered medical aid to the man. And last I heard, he was in serious condition, but stable. But again, it's a situation that illustrates the importance of being able to protect and defend yourself. Now, here's a clip we've got from the Polk County Sheriff talking about what you got to be careful of in Polk County.
A man is in critical condition tonight, and a homeowner and his girlfriend are shaken up after a very scary situation in Polk County. Haines City police say the homeowner had to fire his gun at 2 home invaders.
Well, the police chief here in Haines City says the homeowner is not under arrest, and that's because they believe this case is one of stand your ground.
Based on the totality of the evidence at this time, it does appear to be a case of stand your ground.
And he hopes it's a case that will discourage other would-be burglars.
One should expect that if you're brazen enough to enter into someone's residence and it is not yours with intent to commit an unlawful act, there may be repercussions. We live in Florida, and more so we live in Polk County, and most people are armed.
So there you have another example of law enforcement, similar to the Israeli situation, saying, hey, look, people got to be armed if they're going to protect and defend themselves. Now, we want to say it from the beginning of this podcast. We're supporters of the Second Amendment, obviously. And we think everybody should have that right if they want to choose to go that direction to protect and defend themselves. But you have got to be trained properly. Mm-hmm. You got to know the laws and rules of your state, your local area there, but you've got to be trained, and you have to know what to do. You can't just say, I got a gun, it sits in my closet. I shot it once. It was like 9 months ago or a year ago. I went through one training class and that's it. That's not enough. So
No, it's not like riding a bike. You don't just pick it up
No, exactly.
and remember everything.
Yeah, you've got to be very familiar with it, and you've got to consistently go through different types of training, different interactions with the firearms, so that you understand.
So there's 3 main points in this podcast we were hoping to cover. Point 1, a little bit of background on the Second Amendment, talking about why it was put in place, by our founding fathers. It's the second thing they wrote. There's a comedian out there. He talks about how the first thing was you can say whatever you want, and the second thing is you better get a gun. If you're gonna say whatever you want, you better get a gun.
There you go.
So he made a joke of that. But can you talk a little bit about? I know there's a debate out there or a argument that the Constitution is outdated. It was written by a bunch of rich white men who were, misogynistic and owned slaves.
Right.
So
and didn't understand that we'd have weapons like AR-15s.
Right, exactly. So
40-round magazines.
So why should we listen to those guys? But then you actually look at the language of the Second Amendment, and we have it right here. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I didn't see anything in there about, hunting or only white people, only Asians, or
right.
It says people.
Yeah.
So
nothing in there about target shooting.
Right. Necessary to the security of a free state.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going back to. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that point and how it's not, the verbiage isn't outdated at all.
No.
It may have been written a long time ago by different people, but.
Right. Well, the verbiage isn't outdated, and the circumstances under which they wrote it still happen, meaning tyranny. Leaders can become tyrannical. This country was founded, the United States was founded, breaking off of England. And you had a nasty king over there who sent troops over here to try to tyrannically dominate the people in this land. And so they needed to establish the ability to preserve the freedom that they had just left England for. Okay, this is the very simple way of putting it. It was about protecting against a tyrannical government, about not letting people who get so power hungry and use whatever means they have at their disposal to oppress and dominate other people. That is never outdated. That goes back to the beginning of the fall of man. When Cain kills Abel, there's a power struggle, and Cain ends up killing his own brother. Okay, that still exists today. So that verbiage is speaking ultimately to the ability, or I should say, to the potential corruption of an individual's heart. Why have a well-regulated militia? Why do we need a free state? Because there are people who try to take away your freedom. There are people who try to oppress individuals. That never goes out of date. And you're right, there's nothing in there about specific ethnic groups or religious backgrounds and such. Actually, the religion part is in the First Amendment too, about freedom of religion and freedom of speech and so forth. And all of that is essential to a free society. But again, there's nothing in there that says only certain types of firearms and only certain types of this. No, it's in general. Now, I think these men were wise enough to know when they wrote this that things would change over the years. Did they foresee where we would be with the types of firearms we have today? I don't know. I don't think anybody can really say that. But they also know that we came from sticks and stones, and eventually to things like gunpowder, and then eventually to muskets, and then eventually, they saw the progression of weaponry, and they knew that firearms would continue to progress.
And we've joked around about this before. I'm sure there's at least a couple guys in the militia back then who were thinking, man, I wish this musket could shoot more than one round or one ball,
Can't we just get like a cartridge of some sort that would have multiple musket balls in
I'm
it?
sure the ideas are out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, you consider that that's what man does. Man looks at a situation even today all the time and says, how can we improve this? How can we make this more efficient? How can we make this more effective? Mm-hmm. We've done it with the road system. That's why we have the interstate system that we have, how we build the roads. We do it with medical technology. We do it with everything out there. They knew firearms were going to improve, and they were going to get, more variety. You name it. They knew it. They're not fools. Right. So that argument that, well, they weren't talking about this, so they could never. I don't buy that. Just like we are sitting around here in our world today, knowing that eventually what we see for firearms is only going to get I mean, it's going to get slicker and faster, and you name it.
I mean, the next piece of technology I think we should come up with is some sort of, hot air balloon removal tool on the front of a jet. I think that'd be really cool. I don't know, some sort of
Just kind of grab it in the air.
Yeah, those grabbers you can buy from Walmart,
Yeah,
for toys and stuff.
Just put that on the front of a plane and fly by, and that way other countries don't think they can get away with this stuff so easily.
Just make it military grade, and we're
There
good
you
to go. Well, let's move into point 2 here. Let's talk about the Catholic Church's teaching on self-defense. We've kind of covered firearms, and I know a lot of people. This is something that not a lot of Catholics talk about. I mean, you have one side, you have several extremes out there. Gun blazing, right wing, Constitution loving people. And then you have the other side who maybe still believe in a lot of the same values, but are maybe scared by the firearms side of things. So, but let's talk. Could you talk a little bit about the Catholic Church's teaching on self-defense and what the Catechism says?
Yeah, one of the most common discussions or debates or arguments in some cases, respectful arguments that I've had over the years when I started talking about self-defense scenarios, situations, is it comes from the vantage point, the viewpoint of people who just simply don't think you need to do this, or they don't think God would ever want us to carry a weapon of any kind. They don't think that the church ever endorses any kind of physical force against anybody, no matter what the situation is. People have said, look, I'm ready to die. If someone breaks in my home, I'm never going to hit somebody, let alone shoot somebody. I just couldn't do that. I've had a couple of people tell me that they would be willing to let a loved one, in this case, they were two particular men, two different scenarios, who both said that if a bad guy was about to deal some sort of potentially lethal blow to their wife across the room, they couldn't get there physically across the room in time. A fist was going to come down, or a knife, gun, something, but they had a firearm. If you shot, you might hit them, you might not. The shot itself might scare them enough to run away, but if you hit them, yes, they might die, they might not. Would you do it? No, they say. 2 different times they said they wouldn't do it. So why wouldn't you do it? I could not live with myself knowing I took the life of another individual. Okay, could you live with yourself knowing that you let someone take the life of your wife? And in both these cases, these men said yes. They would rather live with that than live with taking someone else's life. Now, understand, that contradicts a statement in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The 3 paragraphs we focus on are 2263, 64, and 65. And in 2265, all 3 actually talk about not only the right, but in some cases, the grave duty, of defending yourself. But 2265, paragraph 2265, explicitly states you have a quote-unquote grave duty to protect and defend others if you are the head of a community, such as that of a family, even if it means taking up lethal action against an aggressor. Now, there's a footnote in one of these paragraphs from St. Thomas Aquinas, who's considered the prince of theologians, where he says that when you are confronted with an aggressor of some sort, you are more bound to protect your life than the life of the aggressor. So we have not only a right, but we have a responsibility to protect our own lives. Now, that doesn't
just say duty, it says grave duty.
Grave duty.
I mean, the words are important here.
Exactly, they are, son. And I think that's very important for people to recognize that when we like to say, oh no, I can never do that, I'm too peaceful. Look, I don't ever want to do it. I pray to God I never have to. But I also know that if someone threatens the life of someone that God has entrusted to my care, i.e. family member, wife, husband, children, in whatever scenario a person may be in. Because yes, even you ladies may have to protect and defend your husband. Case in point, story of an elderly couple, both in their early 80s. There's a knock on the door one night at their home, just a standard knock, and no reason to be concerned about it. The gentleman gets up and he goes to open the door. There are 2 young thugs out there, probably in their 20s, I think the story said. And the moment the door was open, they kicked in the door. So the knock was simply to get the door open. Once the door was opened, they kicked it in, knocked the older gentleman to the ground. One of the guys jumped on him. So you got a thug on top of the older gentleman, and he's beating him on the ground. He's beating him. The other guy runs in the door, starts looking around. Well, at this point, the elderly woman, the wife, already ran back to the room in the back and comes running back out with a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. And she racks around, and the sound of that, anybody who's ever had one, fired one, or heard one, that's quite an intimidating sound. Now you know what can be coming out of, they say, the business end of that gun, and it's going to be buckshot, it's going to be something, and it's going to hurt. Could be a slug, whatever, but they heard that sound. She lowers the barrel, she points it at him. They run out the door. Now she fires a round. My understanding from reading the stories is that she doesn't kill them, but she basically peppers their backside as they're running out. She potentially saved her life and the life of her husband. So yes, even you ladies have a responsibility to be ready to and really consider whether or not you may have to defend and protect your children, your husband. So because the Catechism teaches this, we can't just toss it aside and say, well, no, I just don't think. You don't think, but the church teaches this. Now, is it in Scripture? Firearms? No, they didn't exist the time Jesus walked the earth. But in Luke 22:36, look it up. This is where Jesus says, as he's sending his disciples out again, if you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Peter says, oh, we have two. And Jesus says, two is enough. So he basically tells them to be armed. Now, some would say, well, the sword could be it could be as a tool. You could use it like a good hunting knife, right? But as one friend of mine said, Jesus knows what a sword is for. The idea of protecting and defending while you're on the roads against bandits and so forth.
Yeah, the road system wasn't, it's dangerous enough today.
Yeah.
But they didn't have law enforcement, and
exactly.
they had very spread out cities, and you were moving very slow. So, being a bandit was a career back then.
Yeah. And you were on your own to protect and defend yourself in large part. You really had to defend yourself and having a means to do it. God puts us in a world that's tough, and he knows that we're living, in a world where there's good and evil, and every heart has to make that decision. The battle of good and evil goes through the heart of every man and woman. That was by a great Russian author wrote that. And this is something that we've always had to contend with. But having the means to protect and defend yourselves legitimately, and that's a key thing. The Catechism teaches about legitimate self-defense, meaning that if you take up arms against an aggressor, which paragraph 2265 states, even if it means lethal action, taking up arms against an aggressor, your intention is not to end their life. Your intention is to stop the threat, subdue the threat. The consequence might be the ending of their life. And even St. John Paul II writes in the Gospel of Life that, and he quotes paragraph 2265 in there, that even if the aggressor isn't conscious or doesn't know what they're doing, whether it's drugs or mental illness or whatever, it's still a duty, to responsibility, and a right of the innocent to protect themselves against someone, even if the aggressor doesn't know exactly. They're not all there at the moment. But this is something that the church teaches.
So could you distinguish the difference between killing and murdering? Because a lot of people will go back to the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill,
right, and
think that contradicts even what the Catechism that you just quoted said.
Yeah, excellent point, son. The commandment, you shall not kill, actually, at its root means you shall not murder, which means you shall not take the life of an innocent individual. If it were thou shalt not kill, then anybody who's taken anybody's life in battle
is murdering.
Right. Is breaking that commandment. King David, who God said is a man after my own heart, when he kills Goliath, there would be a problem there. And there's multiple scripture references in the Old Testament, especially, where you've got the battles going on. The Israelites going after the Philistines, and you've got, multiple situations. And you've got the modern day, the Crusaders who were fighting for the Holy Land. Or let's go to the Knights of Malta, who protected Malta in 1565 against up to 50,000 Muslim Turks. Let's talk about the Battle of Lepanto, which was initiated by Pope St. Pius V. St. Pius V, that there needed to be a battle to protect really Christianity in all of Europe and beyond from, again, attack of the Muslims in 1571. We could go on and on with these stories of people who in battle or in some scenario had to protect and defend, and it resulted in the taking of someone else's life. So the difference between murder and killing: murdering is taking the life of an innocent individual. That's where the commandment, that's what it's speaking to when it talks about that particular part of it. But legitimate self-defense, taking the life of an individual who is aggressing in such a way that is life-threatening and so forth, that doesn't fall underneath that.
Before we get into point 3 of the podcast, Dad, do you want to say what we're offering to those looking to better fortify their house and their home?
Yeah, this is one of those things that, this is a topic that a lot of people have a hard time discussing. So we want to offer this free download. It's great first step practical action to be better prepared spiritually and physically.
The Ultimate Catholic Preparedness Guide is what we're calling it.
Yeah.
So you can download it for free. Click the link in the description below, or check out the summary of this podcast if you're listening to it. Like I said, it's totally free, and look it over. use some of it, use all of it.
And for a lot of people, and you and I both know this, and we're going to get into this in a little bit about the first time we went and got, from a firearm and guns. A lot of people are they're shy, they're scared, they're unsure, they don't know where to get started with this stuff.
Yep. So this download has actionable steps that you can take right now.
Yeah.
To just get started and making your home safer, and also fortifying your soul. Different prayer ideas and things you can do to really help your life.
And it's free. I mean, and you'll glean from it certain things that will really, really work for you. It'll help you understand, just like this podcast, try and help people understand. I don't think you can say it enough, the Catholic Church is teaching on self-defense, because so many people out there that want to be faithful Catholics, and they just think they've come to this kind of personal interpretation of this, and they're missing some very, very important key points. And this download is a way to really help people get started.
So point 3 and final point of the podcast here, we're going to go into a little bit, a few things that you can do to raise the bar, level up your security at home and also while you're out with your family. Before we get into that, though, I thought it'd be good to tell everybody a little bit about your history with guns. So it may come as a shock to people that you weren't, a Navy SEAL sniper or some
I used to work for this
avid hunter.
I used to work for some covert black ops group out there in the military. I can't talk about it. I'd have to shoot the camera or something. It's interesting because I grew up a lot of weightlifting and self-defense training and basic taekwondo type stuff, and then a good friend of mine taught me some very basically almost like a Krav Maga style, just some really kind of hardcore how do you deal with the hand-to-hand sort of stuff. But firearms I was never raised with. And so many years ago, and you were with me on this journey, about 12 years ago. When was that?
12 years.
12 years
now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We lived out in the country away from town a little bit. And I remember thinking, okay, look, I got to have a better way to protect my family. And I got to start looking at firearms. I was not raised with it. Never raised hunting. I was barely raised fishing. My dad just didn't do that. I had nothing against it, but I just wasn't raised with it. So for me, it was a real eye opener to say to you, hey, let's go start looking at getting some firearms. So we went to a local gun shop, walk in there. And I remember standing at the counter, and I know I'm not the only guy out there, man or woman, out there listening, watching right now. Some of you have been through this too, probably. You just don't even know where to start. You don't even know what questions to ask. So I walk in, stand at the gun counter. You want to look like you know something. So you're standing around looking confident. You're looking at things. Someone says,
get those eyebrows out.
Yeah, that's it. Get the
chest
eyebrows
out. Kind of strutting around. Hey, can I help you, sir? No, I'm just looking right now. I'll let you know.
Touch of swagger in there. Yeah. No, I'll be with you if I need something. Yeah. Yeah, let me know if you want to see something. Yeah, I have no idea how to hold the thing, but okay. And I should back this up just a little bit. I was speaking in Kentucky at a parish, and I did a rally down there, and there was the guy that introduced me for the talk, I found out later was a retired Secret Service agent, and that he was actually concealed carrying that night. And so me and a buddy went over to his place to hang out and just kind of have a little bite to eat and talk a bit. And the subject of Secret Service work came up and firearms. And I said, so you have firearms? Oh, yeah. Well, can I see some? Yeah, sure. So he goes back and he pulls out like 5 different, firearms. And the way he handled them, the way he cleared them, the way he checked them and then handed them to me, all of that, I just saw this consistency in all of the weapons he was handing me, all the firearms he was handing me. And I thought, okay, there's something to this.
I remember you coming home from that trip, and we all had like a family meeting when you brought up, looking at firearms more. And you told us the story of the Secret Service agent. Yeah. And from what I gathered was that you were you respected the fact that he respected the firearm so much. And even though he was showing you these weapons, you felt entirely safe throughout the whole process, because he was taking he was checking all the boxes to make sure everybody in his presence was safe.
And that is a key thing. Be well trained so that the people around you can feel safe when you are either talking about or handling firearms. When I hear guys talk, oh, I this and I got this, and if somebody did this and I'd draw on them and I this, well, then I don't want to be near you if there's ever a crisis, because you sound reckless.
Unpredictable, reckless,
Yeah, and there's no room for that. No room at all. You've got to be mature, responsible, but you've also got to be trained well enough and process in your mind well enough steps that might need to be taken. Nobody should conceal carry unless they've processed in their mind that they may have to draw that weapon. Okay, but this is all training, and it's prayer and it's thought process, and you've got to be morally grounded. I believe that 100%. So he's showing me the weapons. I come back. I've learned a little bit about firearms from him. I remember saying to you, let's go. We go to the gun store. We're looking around. I don't understand anything. They're talking about 223 and a 5.56 and an AR platform, with a 1-4 scope. Can I put a pistol grip on this? And, you got a red dot, combined with the this and that, the laser and no first. What in the world?
If I remember right, we didn't buy anything the first time we went and looked at it.
We didn't.
I mean, we'd been in that store countless times for other things.
Right.
Right. And we'd mosey through. I mean, they had some great taxidermy up there. We like to look at the, antelope or deer, the really big antlers. But we were never serious about guns until that day.
We were there for sporting goods and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
shoes, clothes.
Yeah. But the firearm area, the guns, was a whole different world. So I went home, started doing a little more research, emailed my friend, the Secret Service agent, the former. I said, what do I need? He said, to defend your home and yourself, get a pistol, get a rifle, and get a shotgun. All right. Then we started looking at brands. What's a good brand? He starts talking about brands and this and that. And so we started this journey, and you with me, and then some of the other kids got on board, and now all of my children have fired weapons. They have the general understanding of it. 4 basic gun rules, right? This becomes like the commandments. Actually, some people don't know the commandments very well, so it's hard to even compare it to that, but they're like that.
Learn both.
Learn them both. Exactly. Learn them both. Number 1, treat every single gun always as if it's loaded. You treat every gun as if it's loaded at all times. Don't assume anything. And even if someone hands me a gun and I've seen them just clear it, I will pull that slide back. I will check that chamber myself. I want to know I visually have inspected it, looked at it, and checked that chamber. Make sure the magazine's out, all of that. Second, make sure that you never point that muzzle at anything. Muzzle control. You never point that muzzle at anything you're not willing to shoot at. So in other words, you're always keeping it in a safe position, up or down, as you're using it, looking at it, working with it, handing it to somebody. Third, never put your finger in the trigger guard, the metal that's around the trigger. Never put your finger in there on the trigger until you are ready to pull the trigger. That doesn't mean just put it in there, but don't touch the trigger. Just don't even put it in the trigger guard. All right. And you keep it normally. If you're holding a pistol or rifle, you're going to keep your finger up alongside the weapon. And fourth is you've got to know what your target is and what's beyond it and around it, because you might miss. You think like a church shooting situation.
And bullets go through things too.
Bullets go through things and through people.
Yeah.
So if it's a church shooting and you draw and there's a bunch of people in the pews and there are people behind the bad guy who's doing the shooting, you've got to somehow adjust your shot. But this is stuff people, again, don't think about. The type of rounds that you use are also very important. You want to use rounds, especially in a self-defense, in a home defense situation. Mm-hmm. You want to use ballistic rounds, hollow point. They call them critical defense, different names. It's the same idea. It's not a full metal jacket. Full metal jacket doesn't really collapse. It'll warp, it'll twist a bit. But a ballistic round, hollow point, critical defense round is made to start flattening the moment it hits the first
mushroom, slow down.
That's it.
At first contact.
Then it's far less likely to go through the bad guy or through a wall and then hit your family member on the other side of the wall or through the wall, out the house into the neighbor's house. And depending on the power of the weapon, the round, these things can happen. So you've got to use the right round as well. And these are things you can learn very easily.
So we bought just a Ruger 22 LR for the first gun. You know, something really cheap. I think we may have gotten them on clearance or something because they didn't have. We both wanted the camo print, and they only had one camo print. So you gave it to me.
Got it.
You got the black one.
I got a black one.
But then we worked our way up.
Yeah.
You know, I think right after that, the next rifle we bought was the 5.56 AR-15 platform, and we bought them pretty stock. We weren't really into building them ourselves. You know, we're not gunsmiths, or we don't reload. We're none of those. You know. Not saying it's bad. We're at a point where we could do that now. Yeah. But back in the day, we just were talking to professionals at gun stores and asking for their advice and what they thought. And we got different opinions and, you know, made an educated decision. But I guess that's the takeaway from the story, is to try to get, you know, help people just take the first step. Go to your local gun store, talk to professionals about your first weapon, and get some different opinions too.
And make sure these are reputable people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you're going to check videos out online, there are some good ones out there. We like Coleon Noir. Really appreciate the work he does. Second Amendment, is a lawyer and does a lot with firearms as well. You know, there are people like him out there and others that are really good about understanding firearms and the complete picture regarding them. you'll find people out there that are more reckless in their videos sometimes, and I don't like to follow those guys at all. I'm going to learn from the guys that know what they're doing. And we've trained with a lot of people over the years, from ex-Ranger to former Green Beret. I had some training with him, a different Secret Service agent, an active one, some other military guys, law enforcement guys, and you pick up something from each of them. I remember the one guy we were training with, and I asked him at the end, and we were at that sand pit doing that shooting that day, and I just said, "So any advice?" And all he said was, "Slow down." And that's all you needed to hear, was just slow down.
That's all he said. He
That's
didn't
all
really say anything the rest of the time.
It's a combat vet. He said, just slow down.
Just slow down.
Because you get that adrenaline going, and when you're drawing, and we were doing tactical drills that we weren't just plinking target shooting. We were running and shooting.
Yeah, getting the heart rate up first and then drawing. Yeah,
you're flipping tractor tires, doing push-ups, running, throwing stones, then drawing your
But
weapon.
it's true that you think the faster you move your hand, or the faster you pull your gun out, the faster you're going to get your shot off, which isn't always the case.
No.
You're shaky, your heart rate's up, you're breathing heavy.
Yeah.
And you end up just fumbling around and not grabbing the right thing, and not getting your sight picture.
And you feel terrible after that shooting, that day you were shooting at the range. Like, I got to get better at this and that.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, because as many times as we've shot, and different people we've trained with and worked with, we both know we have little things that we need to work on for ourselves. So when I hear people out there who say, "Oh, I don't need to train. I'm a hunter. Where's your gun?" Well, it's in the safe. Is it prepared to be loaded quickly, or already loaded in a safe way, and this and that? And how fast can you get to it? Blank. When was the last time you shot? About a year ago. Okay. All right. Do you have a weapon light? Because look, I got to say this. If you're in your home and something happens at night, you can't pull that trigger on a target unless you can light it up and see who it is. Accidents happen. Terrible accidents.
You have to know what you're shooting at.
You got to know.
Have to.
And if you don't have a weapon light on your firearm, you should have a flashlight, easily accessible. We're big on carrying a tactical flashlight, or just a little flashlight, tactical or not, doesn't matter. But just having a flashlight. In fact, I do this in almost every talk I give for BRC. Here it is. This is the one I'm carrying right now. Okay. It's a 1500 lumen. All right. It's a great little light, but I can use this if I have to. If I happen to have a firearm that doesn't have a weapon light on it, I can go with a flashlight.
But then you have to practice with that.
You've got to
Have
practice.
you ever, we have, but
Right.
if you have a flashlight, have you ever fired a weapon
Yeah.
holding a flashlight in your left hand or right hand, depending on what hand you are? Turning it on, turning it off, walking around safely.
Yeah.
Having muzzle control. It's a whole nother ballgame.
It is. Yeah. And that brings up another quick point of clearing your house, which means if you feel that there's a threat in your home and you have to go through your home to make sure that someone's not hiding in your home. And this is not out of the question, because this happens. Sometimes bad guys in the house, people wake up, bad guy hides, person walks out looking around, doesn't know how to go about clearing the house in a way to make sure that they're checking corners, checking doorways, not exposing themselves to a potential bad guy with a gun or a knife or something, before they could have a firearm on the target, on the threat. I mean, these are things to consider and practice and learn. And, we've been fortunate enough to learn from some good people on this, but we had to go ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't be afraid to ask. And that's, again, why we have the preparedness guide they can get the download for. It's a starting point for some people, and we just all got to get started somewhere.
Yeah. So here's a question some people listening or watching might have is, why? Why should we do this stuff? Why should we look into firearms for ourselves when I can just call the police?
First thought is response time. Okay. I was giving a talk in Florida on this sort of stuff to a group of men, and there was a guy sitting in the corners, had his arms crossed, looking at me kind of gruff. And by the end of my talk, I said, "Any questions?" He put his hand up. He said, "I got to say something." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'm a retired Long Island detective." I said, "Oh, I bet you've seen a lot." Then he described a couple things. No, I won't even say it, but pretty gruesome stuff that this man has been through. And he said, "Every single thing you're saying is 100% true." He said, "When you call law enforcement, you pick up that phone and call, and you think that's going to get it done." He said, 95% of the time when we show up, it's for two reasons: to take the report and clean up the mess. Okay. Don't expect law enforcement to get there in time when a critical situation is going down. Now, I told that story in another location in another part of the country, and a guy walked up to me and he said, "Look, I'm a retired Salt Lake City police officer, 20 plus years on the force. I will tell you, I think that man was being generous, because I can tell you, I think it's much closer to 100% of the time we're not going to get there at the time it's going down. We're going to get there after things have already started to unfold and people get hurt and things get broken and people die sometimes. The average gunfight situation we hear about is roughly 3-3-3. What that means is roughly 3 feet away from another person. Not always, but in a lot of cases.
Generally speaking,
roughly 3 rounds are fired, and it takes place in roughly 3 seconds. You know, there was a shooting in a church outside of Fort Worth, Texas, within the last few years. And it was a guy, it was all on video camera, and bad guys in the back of the church. It was a Protestant church, I believe. And at one point, he just stands up and turns around, pulls his jacket apart, and he pulls out a long barrel. The guy right in front of him just steps back, puts his arms up. Another guy to the side decides to draw. His weapon is in his back, so he's got a back carry, so he's trying to reach for it. And by the time he stands up and pulls it out, it's 3.1 seconds. It's all on camera. You can see 3.1, 3.2 seconds. The man just turns the bad guy and just shoots this guy. Then he turns back to the first guy, shoots him. So 2 people are now dead.
In 3 seconds.
In 3 seconds. Then he turns and starts walking down the aisleway of the church. Everybody now is hitting the deck. Security guard is in the church. Okay, he was in the church as all of this unfolded. By the time it was unfolding and he drew his weapon and fired at the bad guy and killed him, he hit one shot, headshot, and dropped him. You know, God help him. Okay, the bad guy, but 6 seconds. Okay, by the time the security guard was able to draw his weapon, get a bead on the situation, find the target, and pull the trigger, 6 seconds had gone by and 2 other people had already been killed. The idea that I'm just going to call the police and they're going to show up, the security guard was in the church even, okay? So even if a cop is there, all right, even then, if a bad guy draws and gets the jump, the ambush, all right?
Which they normally do. Bad guys have the element of surprise in most situations.
Right. So for us to be prepared is a smart move. And I will say this, the better trained you are and the better prepared you are far less likely to ever find yourself in these problems. Because not only do you prepare by learning how to handle a firearm or self-defense scenario of any kind, whether it's hand-to-hand or what have you, you also will become a thinker and normally be in a better position to avoid circumstances that can become chaotic and destructive.
It all just comes down to taking responsibility too for ourselves, for the safety of ourselves and the people around us. And this brings up another point. When it comes to, I'm sure that guy tried his very best to draw that gun from his back when he saw the threat come in, right? But that goes to show you that sometimes our best, and this isn't putting the guy down at all. This is just us looking at something critically so that we can help other people, help ourselves from the situation.
Right.
But sometimes our best isn't good enough.
Right.
So when we go at training for, the safety of our family or preparing our home, preparing ourselves mentally, our attitude can't just be, I'm just going to do my best and hope for the best, right? We need to have a different attitude. We need to do what is required, right? Don't do your best. We need to do what is required. Because if someone breaks in my house and myself, but more importantly, my wife and my children are at risk, their lives are at risk, I can't just be going around saying, I'm just going to do my best and hope I can get the bad guy out of the house. You know, I need to go with that bad guy with. I'm going to do what is required to remove the threat. If that is taking a life, heaven forbid, that's obviously the last resort.
It may become a consequence.
It might become a consequence. Before that, though, maybe before we wrap this up, could you just talk a little bit about things that we can do to deter a threat before it even gets in our house? Because obviously, if someone's in our house and posing a threat to our family, man, we're in a bad spot. Like, we failed on a few other levels, I think, before that. So what are some things we can do? Anything from, motion lights to cameras, you name it.
Yeah, I would start by saying that the mindset that some people have out there that I'm just going to pray and let God take care of it doesn't work all the time. And look, trust me, I pray every day. I pray throughout the day. I continue to pray, trust God, beg God. Like anybody else, have my ups and downs with trust and faith and everything. We've got to keep moving forward with that. There's no question about that. But just like every other area of life, if someone breaks their arm, you don't just trust God that he's going to heal the arm. You take them to the doctor. There are ordinary means that God puts in our life to be able to accomplish certain things. Okay. Car breaks down, side of the road, even if it's just a dead battery. Okay. Oh, I got to just pray that my car is going to start. Well, and it might. God may do that. Normally, you're going to have to either call a tow truck or go get another battery, have somebody give you a hand, help you out. Everything in life in general, the natural world, there's an ordinary piece of it that needs to be addressed because God has structured it that way. When it comes to self-defense scenarios, there are ordinary things that we can do. Just relying on angelic intervention, while that's amazing, and I call on St. Michael the Archangel every day of my life, and I do believe he intercedes multiple times for me, I also know that there's a human side that God has created me with that I need to take part in. Being wise enough to guard your perimeter, so to speak, just as we're supposed to spiritually do that. We're supposed to avoid the near occasion of sin, which means we have to have our head on a swivel, so to speak, spiritually, and paying attention to what's around us. We need the same thing naturally. So how can we have our head on a swivel? How can we guard the perimeter of our homes, our lives, when it comes to the day-to-day living that we have to do? Motion sensor lights are great for your home. Bad guys don't like light that just comes on, okay? It startles them a bit. It draws attention. They want to operate in the dark. So having motion sensor lights is a good starter right there. Having a dog obviously is good too. Having dogs, whether they're inside, outside, dogs bark, dogs make noise, and that also can stir things. Having certain types of security on the doors. And these are just some of the things you can do. We could spend a whole podcast just on this. And if anybody would like more information on this, we'll maybe do a full podcast.
This is also in the free download. A lot of these ideas.
Nice,
Fortifying
exactly.
your home.
That's
so
right.
You can get a full list of everything that we recommend.
Yeah. You can do alarm systems and then have like an ADT sign in your front yard, or Texas alarm system down here in Texas, and that helps too. Bad guys can be deterred by that. So lights, noise, like dogs, alarm system, that all works. That's all very, very good stuff. Securing your doors. If someone's going to kick in a door, if you have a little extra security on the inside of the door, for example, deadbolts and the bolt from your doorknob going into the door trim is not normally going to be enough, mainly because the strike plate, which is the metal that the bolt goes through, and the strike plate is attached to the trim, that is normally held in place with a screw that's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch long. That's normally what they are, especially on the doorknob. That strike plate is almost always a very short little screw. But on a regular door frame of a regular house, it's pretty easy to kick it in under those circumstances. Pull those screws out of your strike plate and put in 3-inch screws that go through the trim into the studs behind the trim. You can use deck screws. They'll break a little easier than a tempered screw. And some strike plates that are more of a high security strike plate that you can buy at a hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, places like that, they're going to come with tempered screws that are 2 to 3 inches long. I have those on all my doors. All right. And you can really ramp that up even a little bit further. Point is, you're buying time. Some people are going to say right now, oh, they still kick that in, Doug. That's not going to stop somebody.
Right, but just like the story you told a little bit ago, those seconds matter.
They do. Yeah.
If you have 5 extra seconds to get to your gun safe,
Bingo.
or get to your mace or your baseball bat, or yell to your wife
Yeah.
or your children, call the police
Yeah.
while you fend this guy off.
Yeah. Pull that frying pan out that you keep under your pillow. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Those screws can save a life.
They can.
Or
Yeah.
lives.
Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about. You're buying time so you can react, respond, and be better prepared.
And it's been proven that, threats who have tried to break in, if they're having a hard time getting in, making too much noise, the neighbor dog starts barking,
Yeah.
Maybe a light turns on across the street. They have, just bailed ship too. Like, oh, this is too hard. I'm
I
can't get in,
Yeah.
Even if they could eventually get in,
Right.
it might be enough to knock them off.
Oh yeah. And if they're thinking at all, and a lot of times, bad guys aren't thinking. A lot of times they're just behaving off of some sort of impulse or stupidity. But if they're thinking at all, they might be thinking, hey, these people have secured this door. There might be more behind the door that I don't want to deal with.
They hear a shotgun rack,
Exactly. Yeah. So, and there are other things you can use on your doors. There's different types of secure devices. There's a little, like a bar that you jam up under the knob. And
You can buy those at Walmart too.
exactly.
$20, $25.
Yep.
Just little things, like you said, to buy time.
Yeah.
A few seconds.
And you mentioned pepper spray or mace. That's good to have. People who don't feel comfortable with firearms. If you're not comfortable with firearms, you shouldn't have them until you can be trained well enough to be, when I say comfortable, respectfully comfortable. You respect the firearm, you know what it can do. To me, it's similar to power tools. My circular saw, I don't leave it sitting around plugged in when my grandkids are over here. All right. They touch the trigger, that thing goes off. They can't handle it. Someone cuts a leg off.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I figured you would. So no, I mean, you've got to secure your tools. You secure your kitchen knives. You don't leave the blender open with little blades in there sitting on the counter or on the floor so the little kids can put their fingers in
You
there
don't
and
leave
turn
your
it
car
on.
in neutral in your driveway.
Bingo, exactly. So the same with firearms. If you're not comfortable with them, then wait, be trained, get comfortable, but at the very least have pepper spray, OC spray. Fire extinguishers work too, because fire extinguishers not only can put out a fire, but you can spray 10, 15, 20 feet down a hallway at a bad guy coming at you, and you can fog him up and you can get it in his eyes. And
That's thick stuff. That gets in your eyes. It's hard to get out.
it's a
a
mess.
mess.
Yeah. And then you hit him with the other end of it while he's trying to rub it out of his eyes. You know, you use the other end of the fire extinguisher and crack him in the head or in the kneecap. But these are things that a person has to take action on. Now, I would recommend if you're going to have pepper spray, mace, fire extinguishers, put them in a certain place in different places of your home. Okay. Kitchen cabinet, hall closet, bedroom, places like this. For fire, of course, you want to be able to move through the house, get to your kids, have fire extinguishers you can use in the hallway, what have you. But if it's pepper spray, mace, or fire extinguisher, bad guy breaks in and you're in the kitchen and you can't run to your bedroom because time, distance, bad guys in between you and your firearm or your weapon. Kitchen cabinet, right there, boom, there it is. Reach up and don't cover it up with a can of peaches or green beans and get it pushed to the back. People will do this, unfortunately. Fire extinguisher, pepper spray, put it in the cabinet. They don't use it. So months go by and pretty soon it's pushed to the very back and all the stuff is in front of it and you're clambering through it, trying to get to it in the midst of a fire or a bad guy you got to use the pepper spray or fire extinguisher against. So these are some general ideas. Light up the area better with motion lights. Noise like dogs is good. Secure the door. Make sure your strike plates have longer screws in them. And do the same with the hinge side as well.
Anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up here?
I would say just in general, have a prayerful attitude about this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not about fear. Okay. It's about caution. And again, the better trained you are, the less fearful you are. And you and I know this because we've been doing this for a long time and it's been a journey we've both been on together and it's been great. You know, learning a lot together and sharing information with each other. And, you know, you're raising your own family now. And I feel better knowing that my son is better trained and better prepared. That does a lot to give people you love a sense of security and confidence when they know. It's like anybody out there who's got a child who's off at college or living alone somewhere. Okay, drive home safely. Okay, make sure you check the backseat of your car. Yes, Mom. Yes, Dad. I'll do that.
Lock your door before you go to bed.
Lock your door. Oh, yes. Okay, I'll do that. Don't sleep with the windows open on the first floor unless you got a big dog sleeping right under the window. You know, in other words, you're telling your kids you want them to be safe. Then you hang up the phone. I looked at the phone symbol like this, like that's what we're using now. So you hang up the phone and you think to yourself, oh, I just hope and pray that they take care of themselves because you love them and you want them careful. All 5 of my kids have some really good ideas on how to fight. Okay. As you guys were growing up, we did basic self-defense and a lot of you have taken it on yourselves to continue to train. Physically, you take care of yourself, you exercise, work out, stay strong, guard, protect, keep your head on a swivel at all times. You're looking left and right. When you do this, the people that love you feel better because they know that you're looking out for yourself. So I would say be prayerful about it. Do it not just for yourself, but because you love others and you want others to feel the confidence and security that you're taking care of yourself as well. That's a good, holy, godly thing to do.
Perfect. Well, just want to encourage people again to check out that free download, the Ultimate Catholic Preparedness Guide to fortify your life spiritually and physically. You can access that through the link in the description. And I think that's about it for today.
All right. Yeah. Please, everybody, subscribe and share these podcasts with others. We've got many, many more out there.
Leave a review.
Was that?
Leave a review as well. That really
helps
us.
Yes. Leave a review and tell us in the comment section what you'd like us to discuss because we really want to help people, again, be better prepared across the board, body, mind, and soul. And, we want to do some lighthearted stuff and the serious stuff as well. So don't hesitate to let us know.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Dad.
You bet. God bless you, son.